Slavery in America began when the first African slaves were brought to North America colony of Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 to aid in the production of such lucrative crops such as tobacco. Slavery was practiced throughout the American colonies in the 17th and 18th centuries, and African American slaves helped build the economic foundations of the new nation. The invention of the cotton gin in 1793 solidified the center importance of slavery to the South's economy. By the mid-19th century, America's westward expansion, along with a growing abolition movement in the North, would provoke a great debate over slavery that would tear the nation apart in the bloody American Civil War. Through the Union victory freed the nation's 4 million slaves, the legacy of slavery continued to influence American history, from the exciting years of Reconstruction to the Civil Rights Movement that emerged in the 1960s, a century of emancipation. In the early 17th century, Europeans settled in North America turned to African slaves as a cheaper, more plentiful labor source that indentured servants. After 1619, when a Dutch ship brought 20 Africans ashore at the British colony of Jamestown, slavery spread throughout the American colonies. Though it is impossible to give accurate figures, some historians have estimated that 6 to 7 million slaves were imported to the New World. In the 17th and 18th centuries, black slaves worked mainly on the tobacco, rice, and indigo plantations of the southern coast. After the American Revolution, many colonists in the North, where slavery was relatively unimportant to the economy, began to link the oppression of black slaves to their own oppression by the British, and to call for slavery's abolition. Slavery itself was never widespread in the North, though many of the region's businessmen grew rich on the slave trade investments in southern plantations. All of the northern states abolished slavery, but the so-called particular institution remained absolutely vital to the South. Though the U.S. Congress outlawed the African slave trade, the domestic trade flourished out and the slave population in the U.S. nearly tripled over the next 50 years. It had reached nearly 4 million, and with more than half living in the cotton-producing states of the South. Slaves in the antebellum South constituted about 1/3 of the southern population. Most slaves lived on large farms or small plantations. Many masters owned less than 50 slaves. Slave owners sought to make their slaves completely dependent on them.
Oladauh Equiano was one of these slaves that went through all of these sufferings, but he was more fortunate than most slaves because he was able to purchase his freedom. After all he went through, he ended up writing an autobiography known as The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Oladauh Equiano, or Gustavo Vasa.
One day when all our people were going out to their works as usual, and only I and my dear sister were left to mind the house, 2 men got over our walls, and in a moment seized us both. And without giving us time to cry out or make resistance, they stopped our mouths and ran off with us into the nearest wood. Here they tied our hands and continued to carry us as far as they could. Next day proved a day of greater sorrow than I had yet experienced, for my sister and I were separated. A gentleman whose name was Michael Henry Pascal, while he was at my master's house, it happened that he saw me and liked me so much that he made a purchase of me. I was sent quarterly from the house of my then master, one Mr. Campbell, to the place where the ship lay. When I arrived, I was carried on board a fine large ship, loaded with tobacco, and just ready to sail from England. In this state of my mind, our ship came to an anchor, and soon after discharge her cargo, I now knew what it was to work hard. I was made to help to unload and load the ship. I had been so long used to an European climate that at first I felt scorching West Indian sun very painful. While the dashing surf would toss the boat and the people in it frequently above high water mark, sometimes our lamps were broken with this, or even attend with instant death, and I was day by day magnet and torn. About the middle of May, when the ship was ready to sail from England, I all the time believed that fate's blackest clouds were gathering over my head. Captain Doran sent for me ashore one morning, and I was told by the messenger that my fate was then determined. I came to the captain and found with him one Mr. Robert King, a Quaker and the first merchant in the place. The captain then told me my former master had sent me there to be sold, but that he had desired him to get me the best master he could.
During his time with Mr. King, Oladauh worked in a variety of positions, from loading boats to clergying to being a gauger on plantations and serving as a personal groom, in addition to occasionally hiring out Equiano services to other merchants. One of King's boat captains, an Englishman named Thomas Farmer, relied heavily on Equiano and frequently hired him for voyages from the West Indies to North America. Proud of being singled out, Equiano remarks that he became so useful to the captain on shipboard that the captain would tell Mr. King that he was better to him on board than any 3 white men he had. At this time, Equiano begins buying and selling goods and fruits and starts his own side trading enterprise during each voyage. Although he faces setbacks and insults from white buyers who refuse to pay for his good, Equiano acquires a small amount of saving and is determined to obtain his freedom and to return to Old England. King encourages him in his entrepreneurial pursuits, proposing that when Equiano has saved enough money to purchase his freedom, he would let him have it for £40 sterling money, which was only the same price he gave to buy for him.
We set sail once more for Montserrat and arrived there safe. Myself mastered about 47 pounds. I consult my true friend, the captain, how I should proceed in offering my master the money for freedom. When I went in with the money in my hand, I prayed him to be as good as offered to me when he was pleased to promise me freedom as soon as I could purchase it.
What?
Give you my freedom.
Why? Where did you get the money? Have you got £40 sterling?
Yes, sir.
How did you get it?
Very honestly. Captain then said he knew I got the money very honestly. On which my master replied, said he would not have made me the promise he did if he thought I should have got money so soon.
Come, Robert, I think you must let him have his freedom. You have laid your money out very well. I know customers have earned you more than 100 a year. Come, Robert, take the money.
Master then said he would not be worse than his promise, and taking the money told me to go to the secretary and the regular's office and get my manumission drawn up. These words of my master were like a voice from heaven to me. In an instant, I most reverently bond myself with gratitude, unable to express my feelings.
1766, Oladauh Equiano gains his freedom by buying it for £47.
In 1775, he also begins to work on a project to set up plantations on the Caribbean coast of Central America. Oladauh ends up buying and owning slaves for these plantations, as he states,
Everything I could to comfort these poor creatures.
In 1790 to 1792, Otabaku Gano and Oladauh Equiano formed a group known as the Sons of Africa. This group campaigned for the abolition of slavery and for the transatlantic slave trade to come to an end. In 1792, Oladauh Equiano married Susan Cullen and they eventually have two daughters, Anna Maria and Joanna. 5 years later, in 1797, Oladauh Equiano dies a rich man.